All right, what's up, guys? I just finished having dinner with my friend, and I gotta say, I feel a little bit fired up and inspired. And I love having dinners like that where you just get to talk a little bit strategy and what's going on in business and aspects like that. So, here's my coconut water. I'm moving apartments tomorrow. I'm going to Sao Paulo from Florianopolis. Never been there before, don't really know anybody. Gonna try it out. Everybody thinks that 17 days is too long, but we're gonna give it a shot. So, a little coconut water. I have to finish off everything in my fridge before tomorrow morning. But anyways, enough about that. The title of this video is how to get ahead as a Gen Z. And honestly, I'm Gen Z. Well, I'm like 3 months too old for Gen Z, which is kind of crazy. Depends on who you ask. But born in 1996, August, the cutoff is supposed to be the 1st of January in 1997. So we're just going to count it as Gen Z. That's not important. But in this video, I'm going to show you my exact strategy that I'm going to be using to basically get ahead financially and just overall in my life. So let's get into it because I want to share with you guys. And let me just preface by saying that this is definitely not financial advice. I'm not an expert. I'm not pretending to be one. This is just what I plan on doing. So you're going to want to check up on everything that I mentioned in this video and do your own research and make sure that it applies for your situation, because I'm probably not talking about you specifically. I'm talking about me, and I've done the research for myself. So let me get into it. So here is the plan. Let me just... All right. Here is the plan. So this is not financial advice, as I said. Step one is, for me, is the subcontract. For you, it could be to just work your job, whatever that means to you. Subcontracting is basically where you work for someone else as basically like a contracted employee. So let's just say that you work for an agency. Maybe the agency designs websites. When they get a client that needs a website, they give the contract to you, and you get part of that contract despite not having the client at all. You don't know the client. You just build the website. The agency maybe does some other stuff for them. Maybe they help out with the SEO. You just help with one part of it, and you get paid for that part. That's how I sustain myself currently, and I make $1 from this. Yeah. So right now this brings me in about 7,000 Canadian dollars, which is about 5,400 for you who are on the opposite side of the tariff war. Just kidding around. And I work about 20 hours a weekish. It can be a little bit more, it can be a little bit less. When I'm actually focused on working, it's about 20 hours a week. But there's a whole bunch of other time that I'm answering like Slacks and stuff like that, or maybe I'll check something and it takes 2 minutes. I can't disappear for the other time of the week, but I do work about 20 hours per week focused on this. What's up next? So once you have a skill, a high income skill, that could be web design, it could be development, it could be marketing, it could be sales, whatever that happens to be, you want to, well, in my case, I'm going to be trying to start an agency. And the agency is my cash flow vehicle. So this is something I have control over, and I want to be able to grow my income, because as a subcontractor, I'm not really in charge of how the agency finds their clients. I can't onboard those clients myself. I get a piece of the pie. I don't have a ton of leverage. They set the pricing. I kind of just get whatever comes my way, which is cool. But I'm basically in the passenger seat or the back seat of the car, and I want to be in the driver's seat of the cash flow vehicle. So this one will bring in about $2 signs. Definitely more. It can bring in 3. Oh. But it depends on how you execute, of course. So this is what I plan on doing next. So web design, social media marketing, Facebook ads, a little bit of Google ads. I have yet to get a client, but this is how I'm planning on growing that. Now, I plan on using the agency to replace my subcontracting income. I'm not sure when that'll happen, but at some point I want to make that jump, and then all of a sudden I'm in control of this vehicle and I can get it past 10K a month, 20K a month, somewhere around there. Next, I want to build products. Products are things, obviously there's some products that are like ChatGPT, and there's other small products which can be, hey, I help you schedule your post on LinkedIn, or I help you, it's a Chrome extension that helps you write ChatGPT in a blog article, whatever. These can be small little things that you launch, and basically once they're launched, ideally they're set up in a way that working on them all the time. So this can help you create passive income. Now, passive income is definitely a buzzword, and a lot of people think that means easy income or you never check it again. Hey, look, if you want that, you got to be investing in like ETFs or something like that, because most income is not passive. It still requires a lot of work to set up, a lot of work for marketing, and in the end, you still have to answer the question of like, why should people care? If you guys can hear the rain, it's raining right now. It just started raining mid-video. It's definitely kind of throwing me off a little bit, but I do find it kind of peaceful. So I hope you enjoy this lo-fi rain beats. Anyways, the nice thing about products right now is that you can experiment making smaller finite products so easily right now. You can just vibe code these things. You can just go into Cursor. You can throw in some stuff, make me a, whatever the hell. Guys, I can't be coming up with examples all the time. But if it's a software product, you can create those super easily, super quick, pretty much for free, despite not having any knowledge. Now, are those like the best products in the world? Probably not, but they could definitely launch, and you can always spend some time, upgrading them, especially if you're willing to learn how to code a little bit. But the idea here is to solve small problems, charge for them, and then create a portfolio as a base. Let me just give you an idea of what this looks like. All right, so this guy is one of my favorite entrepreneurs at the moment. I'm taking his coding course. So here he has a bunch of different products that he's built as a developer, and he openly shares how much revenue each one of them do. So his CodeFast course is making $50K a month. His ShipFast boilerplate SaaS making $20K a month. He has a data analytics software making $1.8K. And then he has a whole bunch of other products that make money as low as $350 a year or a month, sorry. Or as low as 23, I guess, or as low as 0. But the idea is that you basically just churn out a bunch of stuff and you learn while you're building. Where's my thing? Yeah, that rain is really coming down now, guys. So you create a portfolio and then you learn by building. And the nice part is that you can build super quickly, and not everything's going to be a winner. But the idea is that you build 10, 15 things and you get pretty good at building and launching. And this can be used later on in life. And then step 4 is to basically build a business that can then have a higher valuation and then lead to an exit. And an exit is $3 signs or possibly $4 signs. So here you solve a bigger problem. You build something that can't easily be replaced. Ideally, it has some sort of a community because communities are revolving around people, and you can't vibe code people. You can't use AI to get people to care super easily. AI is strong, but it can't really beat a community at this point. That's why you see so many creator-led brands. Ooh, I can see like a little microphone thing going for the rain, and it's still at half volume. So we're going to see how strong CapCut is in terms of removing that in post. But yeah, ideally, this is where you make a ton of money, like life-changing money. Because, you can make strong cash flow on these products, but you're probably not going to sell an agency for a lot more than like 1x revenue of contracts, so like 1x worth of the contracts that you have signed. So if you have contracts for, $500,000, you can probably sell it for $500,000 if you're lucky. But as a business, something that has a cleaner valuation, maybe you raise some funding, this would lend itself more easily to an exit. And the exit, depends on what kind of business you're in, but you can get a valuation that's, I don't even want to throw some numbers here in case I sound stupid, but it can be, let's say 4 years of the profit. I think that's pretty conservative. Depends on the market, obviously, and depends on the business, but yeah. So if your business does $100,000 a year in profit, you can probably sell it for $500,000, $1 million, or more. Depending on the business. And now that's the plan for making money. But let me tell you some other things about how I'm going to use my money to get me more value, which is what we're talking about here with leverage. Now, for leverage, I'm going to be using this word a lot called arbitrage. And I Googled it before the video here just to make sure I understood exactly what it means. They were defining it as basically buying cryptocurrency here as an example and selling it somewhere that you can get more value for it. which is pretty much what I had in mind for it. It's basically, I see it as you're moving something where it has more value. For example, if I find gold in some dirty mine in Africa, it's not going to have a ton of buyers there. But if I move that gold to, the United States, it's going to have a lot more buyers there. So it'll have more value in the United States compared to where I found it. And that's a form of arbitrage. And so I've been working to employ certain kinds of arbitrage in my life, like starting number one, geographic arbitrage. So as a digital nomad, I basically travel around, I make money online, I go where I want to go. And when I'm doing this, I make dollars and I spend in pesos. So the value of my money increases when I travel around. Definitely depends on where I go, but by and large, if you're making American dollars, that currency is going to be much stronger compared to most of the other currencies in the world. If you go to Europe, if you go to, Great Britain, if you go to some of the countries in the Middle East, this may not be true, but by and large, American dollars are going to be much stronger than local currencies, especially in Latin America, Asia, much of the world. So the value of my currency increases when I go to places that I enjoy going. I enjoy living in Colombia, in Peru, in Thailand, in the Philippines, in Brazil, where I am now. I find it more enjoyable. I can see that my quality of life increases for the same amount of money. So I can either have more benefit for the same amount of spend, or I can spend less and get as much as I did in Canada. So that's one form of leverage that I'm employing in my life, and that you can as well if you'd like to. The next one is something that, may be controversial to some people, to be honest. There's a lot of haters out there that think that you should be paying taxes all the time, no matter what, and that you're, some sort of a scoundrel if you avoid taxes. But that's the game, guys. We don't really have control over how our money is spent on taxes. A lot of people realize that with the United States, they're spending billions and billions and billions of dollars to do a bunch of whack shit, to be honest. A bunch of crazy stuff all across the world. And yeah, if you don't want your money to be spent on that, you can choose where you pay taxes. That's legal. There's nothing wrong with that. So the way that I'm doing this is through tax arbitrage. So my plan, which I'm working on executing right now, is to move my tax residency. Where? Paraguay. Why? If you don't know where Paraguay is, it's right in the middle of a map. It's right in the middle of South America. It's close to Argentina, Brazil. It's close to Bolivia. It's close to, I'm not sure if it touches Chile exactly, but, they're all pretty much smack there right in the middle. Same with Uruguay. It's neighbors with all of those countries. It's right in the heart of South America. And Paraguay is a super tax-friendly place. If you become a tax resident of Paraguay, you only pay taxes on the income that you derive from within Paraguay. So let's say that you're a web design agency. If you have clients outside of Paraguay and they pay you and you bring that money to Paraguay, Paraguay says, no, that's not our money. We didn't have anything to do with that. We're not going to charge you taxes on that. This is called a territorial tax system. And it is crazy for how much value that you can save by not paying taxes. And personally, I don't even live in Canada. Why should I pay them $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 a year in taxes when I'm not there driving on the roads, using the healthcare, all of that stuff? I don't have access to any of the services, really. So for me, it doesn't make any sense to pay taxes to them constantly. So by moving my taxes to Paraguay, I can effectively take my tax rate down from, it depends on how much money you make and how it's structured and everything, but let's just say you pay 30, 35% in taxes. You can take that down to basically zero. And even if you make money within Paraguay from other Paraguayans, let's say your clients are from Paraguay, there's a flat 10% tax, which is still much better than if you're paying taxes in Canada. Now, in terms of how much you have to actually be in Paraguay, basically the rule has been you have to be in Paraguay for 1 day a year. Now, these rules are kind of crazy. Let me tell you guys, don't quote me on any of this stuff, because if you check, one source, it's going to say, well, the official rule book says this. If you go with another source, they're going to say, yeah, the official rule book says that, but nobody's ever checked that. The officials in the migration office don't do that. So there's like the rules, and then there's the how it's practiced. And so for me, I look at how it's practiced. And from my research, people don't actually care how long you spend in the country. They'll basically let you stay a tax resident of Paraguay. That being said, I do plan on going to Paraguay and spending some time there. I've never been, so I'm going to be checking it out. But just letting you know that it's not a huge requirement that you spend all of your time in Paraguay or even half of your year like a lot of other places. So once you get set up as a tax resident and move out of your home country, because you can't just get one, you have to do the other as well, you're pretty much set. And as long as you don't trigger tax residency in another country, you should be tax-free. There's going to be a whole list of fine print on this, but that's basically how it works. Now, with this, I'm planning on setting up a U.S. non-resident LLC. So the U.S. is actually a tax haven, which a lot of people don't know. It's a great place for setting up a business and paying very little in taxes. So if you set up your corporation in a place like Wyoming, Delaware, that's where tons of businesses are set up. I think Florida, don't quote me on all these. I just looked at the ones that were the most interesting. But you won't pay taxes at the corporate level. And now basically, you can't live in the United States and do this because then you'll pay taxes there. But if you're a non-resident, then you won't pay taxes from my research on, the income that you generate, even if it's from US-based clients and you're a US company billing them. Now, the benefit of setting up a corporation in a country in a state like Wyoming is that there's very little accounting reporting requirements. So you're not going to be, doing a ton of filing. You're not going to be, really poring over the details. You don't have to have some accountant auditing you every 3 or 6 months or every year. It's not all that craziness. And I do say craziness because right now I'm filing my corporate taxes in Canada. And then I realize I don't have a GST number. I have to do all my taxes. I have to do my payroll. I have to do everything. And then at the end of the day, I owe them thousands of dollars in taxes that I haven't paid them yet. And I do have that money set aside, but it's still just a pain in my ass. And then at the end of the day, it's still money out of my pocket. So that's not the case in Wyoming. In Wyoming, you also have something called the owner's draw, which is basically if you're the only owner of LLC in this case, limited liability corporation, then you can basically draw on the owner's capital, like the business's money, as if it were your own. So the business has a bank card, and normally you have to keep those very, very separate. But in Wyoming, this is not the case. And to some degree, I'm not going to say to what degree, but you can basically start swiping the company credit card for whatever you need to spend your money on. Now, is there a whole bunch of fine print on this one as well? Yes. I'm not trying to act like I'm a lawyer. I'm just basically repeating what I've seen in my knowledge. And I'm not advocating that you go out and buy a PS4 with this, but I'm basically saying that to some degree this is true. You're just going to have to research that degree on your own because I'm not a tax attorney. Now, the awesome thing about this is that you can actually access financial institutions and credit cards from the United States as a non-resident. So as I mentioned, I'm a Canadian. I don't have an American credit card, and I don't have access to any of their cool bank accounts and all that fun stuff. But I'd like to try it out. So I can actually set up, a business bank account, say at Mercury Bank, been meaning to try them out, and a awesome credit card with, 4% cash back. I think in Canada we have 2% cash back, and it's on these only categories and stuff like that. Gasoline is 2%, but if you buy a PS5, it's 1%. It's just a bunch of annoying fine print. And the US does have better financial institutions and credit cards, in my opinion. And this will give me access to all of that. Now, there are some pros and some cons to pursuing this strategy of tax arbitrage. Now, a pro, for example, is obviously no taxes. That's pretty cool. As I mentioned, there's also the access to the US financial institutions and credit cards. That's pretty cool as well. I think we all understand what the cool parts of this is. The cons, however, are that it requires tax planning. Let's say, basically, the main thing is that you can't live in a country for longer than 6 months normally, maybe 12 months max, without becoming a tax resident of that country. It depends on each country's rules. I've been doing my research in this because I want to know how long I can spend in some of my favorite countries without becoming a tax resident. Now, for most countries, it's you have to spend, I think, 183 days in a year to become a tax resident. So let's say I go back to Canada, but I'm a resident of Paraguay at this point. If I spend half a year there, at some point they're going to say, hey, well, you were here for more time than you were gone. You're a tax resident again. You got to pay us taxes on the money you made this year. And it's like that for a lot of countries. So I could move to Mexico and same thing applies. If I spend 183 days there, I become a tax resident and Mexico is expecting me to pay them taxes. Now, it is the different on how that's calculated for a lot of different countries. For example, one of my favorite countries, Colombia, I was doing my research. Again, this is my research. I could be getting this wrong, but what I checked on it a couple days ago, this is what it said, is that it's a calendar year system. So for example, if I go from July to December and I spend 175 days there, it's going to reset on the beginning of the year. And then next year I can spend 175 days again. And then altogether, I didn't trigger tax residency in either of those half a year periods. So collectively, I could spend pretty much like 1 year, give or take maybe like 20 days less in a year period without becoming a tax resident of Colombia, and I could still be fine. But it's going to require some planning on where you want to live, so you kind of have to stay moving to some degree. So this is more of a digital nomad tax strategy than anything else. And I will say that, there is a little bit of like setup required. You have to go to Paraguay to set this up. You might lose access to some of the financial institutions in your country. For example, I've heard that bank accounts could close your account. It's not super common, but it does happen. And also, like in my case, I have a TFSA, RRSP. I won't be able to contribute to those anymore once I become a non-tax resident of Canada. So it might be the same in your country. I'm not really sure. But if you have like a 401k or something in the United States, you might not be able to contribute to those anymore. Generally, from my research, you're able to keep those where they're at. So I'll be able to keep that money in my TFSA invested, but I just won't be able to contribute anymore, nor will my amount that I'm able to contribute continue to accumulate every year, because that's what happens right now. There's like, I don't know, a couple $1,000s that you're able to add in every year. I won't get that room contributed or allotted for the next couple of years while I'm a non-tax resident. Any other cons? Not really. I mean, for my research, it's best to pay a little bit of tax in Paraguay just so that they see that you're, a contributing member of the country. So like what I've heard suggested is like $500. And then you might want to set aside a couple $100 for the year just to basically have a residence somewhere, which is like an apartment on paper, someone to manage all that stuff. And, you might want to have like a phone bill and stuff like that. That can be important on basically establishing and proving that like the basically nexus of your life is outside of Canada or wherever you're coming from. But all in all, I think you can get that done for about $1,000 a year all in, which is pretty crazy savings. And guys, the last one that I want to mention is time arbitrage, which is AI, capital, employees. So as I'm sure you're aware, a lot of people are using AI and automation to effectively replace their employees. So it's never been a better time to be like a one-person team right now. I just watched this podcast with this lady who has a whole ass marketing agency, and she's the only one there because she has her AI basically dialed in for the various operations of the business, whether that's creating content, editing, podcasting, whatever she needs. There's some sort of AI out there that makes it snap of the fingers, and it's done. And that's amazing. But when you're not able to do that, you can also train employees, especially VAs, working online. You don't have to have full-time employees on the ground in the States. You can pay them Philippine pesos and have a team in the Philippines or Colombia, which is a great place to find talent, or Mexico or Brazil or whatever you might want to go into, Eastern Europe as well. Other than that, capital can be invested. So once you make all the money from these stages, you can invest that, and that investment can bring you a return, obviously, in the stock market. I mean, just because you're losing access to your TFSA, as I am, your 401k, whatever that looks like for you, doesn't mean you can't invest your money. You definitely can, just not through that same venture vehicle. And lastly, content. And content is underrated, but basically you can create an audience. And if you have an audience of a couple 100,000 people, I mean, you can launch a ton of products in the back of that audience, and you could just release the same thing as everybody else. But because you have an audience that maybe likes you for you, they might use your products. Maybe you build your audience around being a nurse. You can release the slippers for nurses, or the best time tracker for nurses, or whatever that looks like. But the idea is that basically your audience can become a stepping stone for getting products out of the door, validating them, testing them, and basically finding more people who fit the same, demographics as that audience of what you're trying to reach. And they are kind of like your microphone and getting it out there to the world. And content is now the way that people are doing that. So content is the new marketing. Just putting out a video, which is otherwise content, it's how people are going to be finding in the future. So that could be a YouTube channel, it could be a social media, whatever that might look like. But I highly recommend that you employ content in some capacity, because it is an incredible form of leverage, because it never gets taken down. Well, I mean, it can get taken down, but it usually doesn't get taken down. And it'll just stay out there, getting your message out there to the world over and over again, passively. They're like, each YouTube video is like a little product in your portfolio sitting out there, pulling in a return. Not always an amazing return, but it can be a return for years to come, especially on platforms like YouTube, where the content has a super long shelf life. So highly recommend you employ content, at least to some degree, in executing these other plans. Now, I want to say that, obviously this plan in this video is my plan. If you have, kids, if you have a house, if whatever your circumstances are, it's not going to make sense for you exactly how I do it. But this is my plan, and I offer it to you guys in whatever format you want to choose. Maybe you want to pick and choose certain parts of it. But this is how I plan to get ahead as a Gen Z, because the world is a little bit stacked against us. The housing crisis, the tariff crisis. I mean, it's a little bit tough out there. So you kind of need to employ all the forms of leverage where you can. And these are my forms of leverage. So this is day number 10 of building a $10,000 a month online business while I travel the world. If you got any value out of this video, please just hit the thumbs up and hit subscribe, and maybe send it to your friend. Drop a comment if you're employing any of these strategies in your own life, or if you have something else that other people can benefit from. Let us know what you're doing in the comments below. And other than that, I will see you guys tomorrow from from here. Yeah, I go to Sao Paulo, and I leave tomorrow night and I arrive on Friday. So I have no idea what the video tomorrow is going to look like. It's probably going to be me in some coffee shop. But either way, we'll see you guys tomorrow. Thanks for watching. Take care.